Okay, thank you for joining us. This is one webinar of many that Oikocredit's trying to push out and make sure that our investors and potential investors are well informed. This one is going to focus primarily on my trip to Senegal. Just a week ago I was in Senegal, a country in West Africa, where Oikocredit has a regional office as well as a regional presence. And yeah, it was a fantastic trip. But before we get into that, my background, my name is Stuart Krengel, as you can see here. In 2013, I became the Regional Business Development Associate. And soon after that, I got on a plane to Senegal, so that was a cool little perk of the job. Yeah, I've been working in microfinance for about 7 or 8 years, in different parts of the world. And I've been working for Oikocredit now for 2. So there's a little bit of background on me. So for those who are on the call, let's see here, that maybe are a little new to Oikocredit, I'm just going to take a couple minutes to talk a little bit about Oikocredit International, Oikocredit USA, and how that structure works, and also kind of how our lending practices work around the world. As you can see from this slide, at Oikocredit International, we are an international cooperative society. We have a cooperative board with many, many members from all over the world, and we're all focused on making sure that Oikocredit as a global organization continues to have its all the voices heard throughout the organization. So with that said, we hold an annual general meeting every year where big issues are voted on, and that general meeting kind of rotates throughout the world. We've been around since 1975, and in the Netherlands we operate kind of as similar as a nonprofit would here, but we're registered in the Netherlands as a co-op. So that's Oikocredit International, located in the Amersfoort, Netherlands. Okay. Some of the stats behind Oikocredit International. Overall, almost a $1 billion organization. We got a little bit to go, but hopefully in the next couple of years we'll be able to make it. We've been able to return a 2% yield for over 25 years. I might be wrong. I might be more than that, so I'll play it safe with 25 years. And so that's the dividend yield that we're able to return to our investors. In the 67 countries that we operate in Africa, Asia, Central and Eastern Europe, Latin America, and there are 2% of other as well. We have 36 regional presences. We have a regional presence in 36 of those countries, including Senegal. And as a great little stat at the bottom here, 250 employees with 45 nationalities. It's something we're very proud of. The portfolio, we are currently lending to 864 partners. With that, we are using $674 million out in the field that we reach 26 million people with, and that money comes from over 45,000 investors. Now, Oikocredit USA is set up as, I guess the easiest way to say it is, as a fundraising arm for Oikocredit International. Our purpose here is to continue to market and brand and create awareness around Oikocredit and furthermore Oikocredit USA, and we do that by going and speaking and talking, doing webinars for that matter, and trying to get people to understand what investing in Oikocredit is. And I think we'll be doing that a little bit today in my story about Senegal, so I won't focus too much on this slide. But on the bottom, we're very proud of an award that we got last year from Impact Assets. We were recently recognized on the Impact Assets 50 list, which lists several different funds that are out making a positive environmental or social impact on this world, and Oikocredit is on it for the first time, so we're very proud of that. The way we go about investing in those 67 countries is they kind of are diversified or bunched into 3 categories, one being MFIs, which stands for microfinance institutions, and then we also make direct investments in co-ops and fair trade organizations. And last but not least, we have the small and medium enterprise category. Today, in terms of Senegal, we'll be talking a little bit about interaction with Oikocredit and MFIs, as well as a specific cooperative. And this is the kind of last slide I want to show you before we jump into Senegal. It's kind of how things work. again, the U.S. investor hears about Oikocredit through an Oikocredit USA representative. They make an investment. That money goes to Oikocredit USA, but it's then dispersed to international. And then international then deploys that money into the field into one of these three categories generally. Okay. So again, feel free to ask questions at the end about the intro and more general Oikocredit information. But here is the kind of lion's share of the presentation. Senegal. Senegal is a West African country. The capital, Dakar, which you can see on your left of the map, is a city of about over 5 million people. And some of the other stats around Senegal, 75%, it's really they're relevant to this presentation, 75% of the country itself relies on agriculture as a way to make a living. And if we know anything, agriculture is risky from Oikocredit's perspective to lend in. Oftentimes in the developing world, vegetable markets are very saturated with the same products, and oftentimes a lot of things go to waste. So we'll keep that in mind as we go through and talk more about Senegal. We flew into Dakar. I'll go back. Flew into Dakar, and then if you continue down the map, you see the southern part of Senegal that is you can see the split in the country called the Gambia. I was lucky enough to join a group that flew from Dakar, south of the Gambia, to a town called Ziguinchor. And Ziguinchor is part of a bigger area called Casamance. And so Casamance is definitely one of the poorest regions in all of West Africa. We took a plane there and we traveled from Ziguinchor to Bignona and to Dialulu, and we visited different Oikocredit clients along the way. Again, very heavily focused on agricultural lending. The first place we visited when we reached Ziguinchor is MSEC, and MSEC has, I believe, about a clientele right now of 20,000 clients. They're definitely a growing MFI. Other MFIs in the region are a lot larger. But however, MSEC has been working with Oikocredit and has received 3 loans over the term of our relationship. And they had a regional office in Ziguinchor, and their headquarters are in Dakar. So we visited the regional office. And the first person that they had us come meet was definitely by far the I guess the biggest way to put, easiest way to put it is a firecracker. She is an entrepreneur to the bone. She, as you can see here, she sells clothing and cloth. Generally, her biggest business is selling kind of the traditional African prints you see behind her. However, as I was talking about before, oftentimes even clothing markets are very saturated in marketplaces. So this woman, her name is Benita, decided that she had to be a little more entrepreneurial. So she asked for a loan from MSEC of around 2,500 euro to actually travel to Morocco and buy different fabric. And so she came back with these, and I wish I had a picture, but this beautiful jeweled silk fabric. And so now her clientele has grown. She now has a credit line of around 5,500 euro to continue bringing this, this fabric in. But oftentimes she has customers that come from Dakar to buy the fabric from her and then fly back to Dakar to get dresses made. So she's really created a lot of economic opportunity, and she started by herself, and now she's employing 4 people, which is another great impact of her loans from MSEC. This is a local tailor pictured with an Oikocredit International representative, Blanca Mendez. I wanted to show this picture because in the same town, this gentleman owned and operated a tailor shop where he also employed more like an apprenticeship for 13 kids. And it kind of shows the connection in a small town that this tailor oftentimes takes Benita's clothes and actually turns it into dresses or some traditional African wear for men in Senegal as well. This scene here is a scene of a large fishing operation. And this, we weren't able to take a picture of the entrepreneur. He refused or declined to have his picture taken. But this scene is kind of to tell about a little bit of a bigger client of MSEC. This gentleman, as you can see here, I would have never been able to start my business without Oikocredit, is what this top line, this quote says. And the scene here depicts basically a very large shipping operation. And the shipping operation started very small. This guy had worked for other large companies exporting, and he decided to approach MSEC one day because he wanted to break off on his own. And he started with a loan of 5,000 euros, and now, today, he has a credit line of 50,000 euros. He employs 9 people, and he ships twice a week to Turkey, Greece, Spain, and Portugal, different local fish from Senegal. So it's a little bit of a bigger scale. Sometimes people think of microfinance in terms of $50 to $150 loans. Oftentimes, there are larger success stories in microfinance institutions, and this is one of them. It's kind of a very interesting progression for this gentleman, and he definitely was very happy to meet us from Oikocredit to understand where the capital was coming from. Again, very savvy entrepreneur and becoming very successful. The question that we maybe can talk about afterwards is, the question I posed to you here is, well, maybe the question is, when does this person start receiving money from a traditional bank? So here are 2 logos for 2 cooperatives now that have since merged and created Copec Sud, first being Les Savars du Sud, and that is a women's cooperative, women's agriculture cooperative, and Copex, which was started as a mango cooperative, they have now formed to create Copec Sud, which is primarily a mango cooperative. We got to visit them in Dialulu, which was at the top of the map. The quote here speaks to, again, that market problem. There is a lot of wealth in terms of resources, and in this case we can talk about it in terms of mangoes. But even though they have all these mangoes and all these resources, they can't afford a bicycle. This is something that one of the mango farmers told us. And he quickly said afterwards, 75% of our production goes to waste. So we were a little late seeing the mangoes. They're still about 6 weeks out, but this kind of shows a picture that these mangoes growing here will probably go to waste. So here was the larger problem happening in Dialulu and Casamance, for that matter. What are we going to do with this commodity? What are the options that we have to create a market and preserve these mangoes? So that's kind of where Oikocredit comes in. And on the left of your screen, you have our country director of Senegal, Sambou Koli. And Sambou Koli has worked for the last 4 years with these two individuals. On the bottom right, we have the women's president of La Savare du Sud. Remember, I was talking about the merge. And at the top, we have the president of Copec Sud. Sambou Koli said, Oikocredit wants to do a project in Casamance. And we've decided through feedback from these 2 individuals and others that we should go ahead in producing mangoes. We'll work on the financing, but first in the financing, and the financing was for 2 things. It was to create a factory where they could process and preserve the mangoes, as well as they also are trying to connect and create a market in the Netherlands and find a broker-dealer in the Netherlands that would be able to take large shipments of mangoes from Casamance directly. So here is kind of the big players. The woman on the right needs to be present because the women are going to have a major role in the formation of the factory and then the work that's going to happen in the factory. And then the gentleman at the top, he was the one that originally organized the cooperative, and he rode his bike to 21 villages all over Casamance to get buy-in from village leaders and mango farmers to be able to form Copec Sud, because they understand together that they're much stronger and that together they can create opportunities for their respective villages. So this is another graphic, I think, that explains it as well. The suppliers are going to be Copec Sud, and the business itself is going to be Les Savers de Sud, and I think that we put this in here because the merger hasn't completely gone through. But the equity investors are Oikocredit. Oikocredit has given them a loan of $500,000 to build a factory, which we'll show some pictures of later. Copec Sud has also put money towards the building of this venture, and then there's another fund from America called Aventura. And as I mentioned before, there has actually been a buyer and a dealer located in the Netherlands who hopefully by the end of 2013 will be receiving 10 containers of mangoes directly from Casamance. This is a picture of a scene when we were actually welcomed. We showed up to Copec Sud, and we heard this drumming, and Sambu didn't tell us anything, but there was about 300 people there to greet us, all from different villages, are all in Casamance. Some had traveled from 50 kilometers the night before, spent the night in the local village to greet us in the morning. And there was a large ceremony, but the gist of it is kind of in this picture, is that Sambu has worked incredibly close with these village leaders. Sambu is a really incredible guy. He speaks the local language Wolof, so communication is is key, of course, and he takes care of all that. And Sambu actually has an MBA MBA in finance from a university in Toronto. So he really knows how to create a business model, but a traditional business model does not work in Casamance. And so him being closely connected with this kind of brain trust you see here is really, really, really important. And over time, Sambu has just become part of the village, part of the people, and so that's where you see this. We trust in Oikocredit, we trust in Sambu. Here is a walk directly to the factory that has been built. As you can see, it's coming along. In my opinion, I'd say it's about 80% done. All the equipment is inside, got large refrigeration units, fuse box, very functional and sustainable equipment for sorting and packing. And there's a well that's been dug for water processing. It's a pretty amazing thing. And here is basically after the ceremony, this is the first group to start walking towards the factory because we were then all in there together, kind of just enjoying what had happened through this partnership. This is a picture I wanted to show to kind of depict the technology that we're using. This is that Copec Sud is using that for that matter. It's not by any means high tech. It is again functional and sustainable type of equipment. If anything were to happen, if anything was to break, it makes no sense for us to have computerized machinery that might be in the end more efficient if we can't fix it. So a lot of the equipment you see looks like this. Lots of steel, very, very functional technology. And from what I was told, even including the refrigeration units, if anything was to go wrong with any of the machinery in the factory, that they would be able to, the furthest they'd have to go is to Dakar to get the pieces. And even there is a dealer in the Ivory Coast for the machinery of the air conditioning machinery. This is a really cool picture. This is about half of the people that there to greet us. We tried to get them all in for a picture. But here's kind of the layout of the main floor of the factory. You can see a kind of a nice mixture of men and a mixture of women. Oikocredit is very keen on making sure if we're going to fund a project that women are integral to the planning process. Senegal is a 90% Muslim country, and definitely from what we view, a lot of men hold management positions. However, in this partnership, again, there's a lot of women not only sitting on the board, but also being integral to the manufacturing process. This is a great quote. I love this. "We are poor, but the soil here is rich. We expect the factory will break our poverty." One of the added values of the factory is that the original cooperative or the original land of Les Severs de Sud is more like we were seeing in this picture, with carrots, lettuce, tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, so on and so forth. Senegal is currently in a 4-month dry season, which basically anything can grow. It's an amazing climate, about 84 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and it really allows for growing some really beautiful vegetables. So with that said, there's going to be drying mechanisms in the factory for the mangoes, and hopefully, again, with the 75% of crop loss, this also translates into the scene we're seeing here. The hope is that we'll also be able to try some tomatoes, some onions that will be able to be shipped as well, if our broker feels that he can put that out into the Netherlands as well. But also be able to preserve things into the rainy season for families to be able to use for cooking. This is the last picture I believe I'll show you. It's the group at a mango orchard. I show you this picture because this speaks directly to Oikocredit and where we're all from. There are people here, of course, from Senegal and Casamance, but also from Sweden, Frankfurt, Peru, the United Kingdom, and Canada in this picture. So it truly speaks to Oikocredit's nature as a global organization, and it was an incredible trip to go down to Casamance and learn about not only our work with microfinance institutions, but also our work in the equity investment world, equity investment in the developing world. And one last thing I want to say, as things are popping in my head now, the reputation of Oikocredit is that we go where others won't. Won't or don't. You could use either word at the end. And Casamance is a true example of that. One of the stories that I learned that really kind of got me a little choked up was that Sambu got really invested in this project. In Casamance, everything relies on agriculture. You have to work with agriculture in order to create opportunity. But again, it's a very risky loan. And so Sambu is getting very, very, very emotionally attached to the project, to the people, and really wants this mango farm to come through. And so a few years back, it came time for Sambu to talk directly with Oikocredit International to actually get funds dispersed. And Sambu went to Oikocredit International extremely nervous, knowing the risk from his MBA background was great, and had a feeling that Oikocredit wasn't going to approve the project because of its risk. After a couple-minute conversation, the project was approved by Oikocredit International, and subsequently Sambu said with his own words, "I know I'm working for the right organization. I know that Oikocredit believes and walks the walk and talks the talk in what they do." So I want to leave you with that Oikocredit goes where others won't and don't. And I was really, really pleased to be able to go and see that for myself. Please feel free to take down my information here. That's my personal cell. If you have questions past the webinar itself. But again, thank you for joining me, and I'm happy to open it up to questions at this point. We can do it two ways. I believe we're going to open up the line, but we can also do it by, there's a raising your hand feature. And I'm trying to make sure that I can view it. But also, you can see it in the question. You can type in questions, and I can be happy to answer them as well.
All right, there is a question. So the question is, to what extent do your efforts help people avoid local, many times exploitive moneylenders? Yeah,
that's a great question. Well, we can start just in generally the exploitive moneylenders. Oftentimes we refer to them as loan sharks. And this might be kind of what you're talking about, but microfinance is definitely trying to be the place where we bank the unbankables, where in previously, before microfinance reaches a developing part of this world, Oftentimes there are predatory money lenders that will sometimes charge 200 to 300% on loans. Microfinance is kind of to make sure that that doesn't happen, is to give people opportunity, give people economic justice, to make sure that they can get a reasonable loan that will assess their personal situation and assess their business and their business needs, and make a better life for themselves and for their families.
Patty has a question. Is there an education component with the loan, refinance, and money management?
I can speak to, there is definitely an education component that comes with this. One of the strong things that I mentioned before is that oftentimes Oikocredit will have a regional, if not country-specific presence, and of course in case of Senegal. So the education comes, for at least for the Mango project, comes directly from Sambu. He is working, we have an equity stake, we have seats on the board, we're very much involved in that project, and so the educational standpoint from there is really the business knowledge, and now that we're invested in the project, we're constantly educating the villagers and the mango farmers, and they're constantly educating us in return on how to best do the venture. Now, from a bigger regional standpoint, in the Ivory Coast we have a regional office, and one of the employees there works specifically on capacity building and social performance management, and I guess throws in a little technical assistance there as well, and working with microfinance institutions. So Oikocredit has funding for these positions in certain parts of the world, and the job is really of the social performance manager and capacity building manager is to travel all over the region and help MFIs do their job better. And one of the things I keep saying, social performance management is something that Oikocredit is really growing, is where you actually look at different data and collect different data than you had before, because you want to know more data on the social performance of your clients. Are their homes improving? Are they happy with their loans? Are their kids going to school? And so we constantly are training people on, or microfinance institutions on how to do that in the field. Hopefully that answered a little bit more.
Patty, your line is open. Does that answer your question? I assume yes.
Okay.
Next question. Yes, she said yes. How does your trip to Senegal compare to other international microfinance experiences you've had? And this is from Ryan.
That's a good question. When I say I've been in microfinance for 7 years, one of the greatest parts about working in microfinance is you do get to visit countries, but oftentimes you are here in the United States doing work, and doing work for projects that are happening tens of thousands of miles away. So I can give you a perspective from a couple other countries, and that is Honduras and Guatemala. And I would say they're very similar in most ways. I think that poverty is very similar across the world. Different countries have more of it. Some countries have less of it. But in the end, that's what Oikocredit is out there trying to do, is be very country-specific about the way that we attack poverty. In Guatemala, there was a very large indigenous population. I found that to be the same in a lot of the tribes and the villages that were in Casamance. One big difference is religion. Of course, Latin America is predominantly Catholic, and the country of Senegal is 90% Muslim and 10% Christian. And so we definitely, as a group, saw a lot of differences in that. There were some Islamic religious practices that were kind of different for me to see and know. But again, yeah, back to my original point, it was very similar as far as the experience for me personally and an experience for the overall group. It's always a very unique and amazing trip to go visit microfinance in action. Well, those are all great questions. If you have another one, feel free to pop it in. But yeah, thank you, of course, for joining me and listening to my story. again, you have my contact information, and I'm happy to speak with you directly and be a resource for any more information about Oikocredit in Senegal specifically, or just kind of Oikocredit and its work around the world.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Bye-bye.